immediately they're the fault of those people that did the shooting and let the bombs off and caused such mayhem that killed so many people. It's a multicultural city, just like so many in Europe. They're not the first people to die from this. We had Ankara, we've had Beirut, we've had other places. Immediate fault is there. Next fault line suggests it comes from ISIL. Where does ISIL come from? I think we need to think about that. We need to think about who's supporting them and funding them, and I think we need to think and reflect on the words of President Obama over the weekend, that the growth of this force is in part a consequence of our wars in Iraq. This is a time we need to think very carefully about where we go in the long run, but immediately we need to ensure there is reasonable levels of security to prevent such a thing happening anywhere else in Europe or here.
You're clear, though, that part of the fault lies with Western intervention.
I think we have unleashed forces, because after all, Al-Qaeda did not exist in Iraq before 2003. Al-Qaeda grew later into Iraq. It wasn't in Iraq. It was a bad situation in Iraq. I'm not defending Saddam Hussein, but it was not that. We've got a problem that we have to address, and therefore I think the horror of Paris has to be reckoned with. But the slightly more encouraging sign is the speech made by the General Secretary of the UN, Ban Ki-moon, to the Vienna conference, the discussion at Vienna, the possibility of some kind of agreement surrounding ending the civil war in Syria, for all the horrors that go with it, and the fact that you had the European Union, US, Russia, all there.
On a very simple point, yes or no, have you had discussions with the government about them trying to persuade you to support taking action against ISIS?
We received a security briefing on Saturday, and I look forward to further briefings.
But have they tried to engage your support for airstrikes?
As yet, no, but there may well be discussions on that.
Would you ever support any kind of military action against Islamic extremists?
I think I would support security measures, policing measures to deal with these issues, but I think we have to be careful. If we act illegally and irrationally, then we stand by the rule of international law, we stand by the Charter of the United Nations, we stand by our own law. If we start doing random acts without a legal backing for them, then we don't strengthen our position in the world. So I think the answer to your question is that we have to abide by the law.
But the law sometimes does allow military action.
It does.
Would you ever support military action against Islamic extremists?
I think that's a hypothetical question at this stage, because what I'm saying is I do not...
Well, that's a question of principle, Mr. Corbyn.
I'm saying the point is that at the present time, the issue of the bombing of Syria does not seem to me to be the right way forward on this, and so I do not support it at this stage.
But on the wider question of principle, you're putting yourself forward to be Prime Minister one day. People will want to know, and they're entitled to know, if you, in theory, would ever support military action against Islamic extremists.
Well, I'm not saying I would or I wouldn't. I'm saying it's a hypothetical question at this stage. My view is that we have to review our foreign policy, review the situation that's going on within the region, and listen to words put forward by Barack Obama on behalf of the United States and Ban Ki-moon on behalf of the United Nations. They made some very wise comments over the weekend. There has to, at the end, be a political solution to it. You seem to be trying to move the question solely onto military action. I think there are other actions that can be taken as well, if I may say so.
Indeed, but political settlements, as you well know, often take a very long time. If we saw the kinds of horror in Paris here, if you were Prime Minister, would you order security services onto the street to stop people being killed?
Of course you bring people onto the streets to prevent and ensure there is safety within our society. Much better, that's done by the police than security services. Much better, we have strong and effective community policing, neighbourhood policing, and a cohesive society that brings people together. Obviously that is essential, and so that's one of the messages I'll be putting to the Prime Minister.
But if you were Prime Minister, would you be happy to order people, police or military, to shoot to kill on Britain's streets? I'm not happy with the shoot-to-kill policy in general. I think that is quite dangerous, and I think can often be counterproductive. I think you have to have security that prevents people firing off weapons where you can. There are various degrees of doing things, as we know, but the idea you end up with a war on the streets is not a good thing. Surely you have to work to try and prevent these things happening. That's got to be the priority.